Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
And the aliens with mind meld and give them the technology. They're bad aliens. So are you surprised the Nazis were influenced by demons?
No, if demons are real, I would definitely think they'd be on the side of the Nazis.
Yeah.
McDonald's is connected to the Clintons. They chop up the bodies and put them into the sausage and hamburgers. People are being cannibalized. Look it up.
And I'm watching CNN talk about this as violent white nationalist protests. We have done everything in our power to keep this peaceful, you know?
It's Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
Welcome to Yeah Nah Pasaran, a show about fascism and its gravediggers. I'm Cam Smith.
I'm Andy Fleming.
And joining us for the fourth time is Tom Tanuki. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Basically I'm the executive producer now. Is that about right?
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Tom, did you have a good weekend reclaiming your roots as Australia's premier yarder?
Yeah, I haven't yelled at anyone for quite some time. It was odd. And what's more, I haven't done it up in Brisbane before, but I did it in Brisbane this time. And, I just frankly, the change was very odd. We weren't yelling at ultra nationalists or anything this time, like I'm sort of a little bit more used to, but we've yelled at different kinds of people. But this time it was kind of people heading to a populist and vaguely nationalist kind of anti-vax rally. And also it was in a weird situation where they were kind of like all around us. And I kept feeling that if it were Melbourne, by those standards, we probably would have been in a fight, or it would have been a lot more tension, but instead it was just this really casual abuse gauntlet.
You're all delusional. You really are. In 6 months you'll be back to watching Married at First Sight. You don't care about politics. You're a daydreamer. Have a good day, though.
We were just sort of meandering along, and I was telling them they were all daydreamers, and they were calling me what did I get called? Bootlicker and that kind of thing. And it was really casual and it was really nice. It was nice to step back into the yarding boots.
Just for people that might not be aware, what is yarding and where were you on the weekend?
Yep, good question. Yarding is an acronym, and YARD stands for Yelling at Racist Dogs, which is a group that was founded in late 2017, very much in the era of popular named racist dogs, be they, touring ones at the time like Lauren Southern, or faux citizen journalist ones like Harvey Yemeni. So it was founded in that era. However, as you can see, it's got its applications, much more wide sort of base than just, yelling at nationalists. I mean, obviously there's the argument between, CAF, Campaign Against Racism and Fascism, who were holding counter rallies to some of these anti-vax rallies that were being held last weekend. And, they say that the rallies are led by the far right. I'm more inclined to argue, as I think some of you probably would be, that there's a definite faction in there of manipulating far-right people, but it's more that they just keep rolling over for them. So it might be a little bit academic at this stage, but, by the time that they're actually attacking unions and that kind of thing, maybe you should judge them more through their actions than through their factions, you know what I mean? But nonetheless, yeah, there were rallies all across Australia, and, obviously famously the Melbourne one they think it had the most protesters of any rally in Australian history, which sounds a little bit lurid, but, they're given to overblow things a bit. But we reckon that they had 100,000 or more, which is incredible. I'm not going to undervalue that achievement of theirs.
How do you explain that, Tom? I mean, I don't know what the numbers are like, but 100,000 is, a figure that's been touted and seemingly supported by a number of rational commenters or commentators, which is quite significant.
Huge.
And what I thought was remarkable was that this took place at the same time as Victoria was reaching a double vaccination rate of those aged 16 and over of about 90%. So, in other words, the great majority of adult Victorians have been vaccinated. And at the same time, and the restrictions on movement have been lessened. There's much more freedom of movement than there was some time ago. At the same time, at that very moment, you see tens of thousands, let's say, take to the streets in protest. So what do you and in what seems to be the largest assembly of its kind to date, what do you make of that?
Mate. Well, first of all, I got it so wrong a couple of weeks ago when I said, I'm pretty sure that they were all going to be shrinking with all of those changed circumstances that you just stated. You know what I mean? The loosening of restrictions. So, part of me wonders why you're asking me at all, because I'm like, maybe
because you're a guest on the show, Tom, and we want your wisdom. So please, be wrong again.
Thank you. Well, no. So here's the thing. I definitely thought that they would shrink, but then, as you know, I've been doing commentary on, and looking at, along with you guys, on movement for a long time, since it began more than 18 months ago. And one persistent criticism I always had of it is that basically it was a conspiracist melting pot scene, as in they're all just happy to get together. I mean, like we previously saw with a lot of, American QAnon rallies and that kind of thing. At conspiracist rallies, you generally get this, as one comrade puts it, like protestival vibe, that they're just happy to be there and that they're not really protesting for anything in particular. They're just happy to get together because they've been hanging out on Telegram and trading bullshit back and forth, and now they're happy to hit the streets and to just sort of hold their placards about, one of a million different things that they've learned from Telegram and just be there. And that isn't really the same as having a tangible movement with goals, names, and, things that you're actually, tangible demands. So I always had that criticism of them. However, and this is the main reason I think that they've swelled right now, to probably manage to get out. I think what you saw in Melbourne was probably, almost close to the full numbers of people who've been red-pilled during the pandemic. I can't imagine it's too much larger than that. I think you pretty much saw, and it's because someone actually mentioned to me that they noticed that Real Rukshan's live stream numbers were, it may have been UCAM, I'm not sure, were among the, around the lowest they'd ever seen them. And it's because, some of us think it's because they were all actually out on the day. So you're really just seeing pretty much everyone. I think that's you starting to see realistic numbers. And the reason is because they do have a tangible demand. Whether you like them or not, right now they are asking for something tangible and political, and that is that they want an item of legislation that they've all blown up to, to communism launching proportions. The pandemic management bill that Daniel Andrews has tabled, they want that bill killed, and that, unlike going, we want every mask to disappear, or we want the virus to disappear, or we want to pretend that we can go back 18 months, or anything else that they were saying before. That's a very tangible thing. It's also led to a huge amount of support from all these kind of buzzing vultures of the UAP, One Nation, and, even some Liberal Party senators and people who now see that ahead of next year's federal election, we can start to really use these people for something. Let's get them appetized for engagement in the political world. So they're actually getting excited that they're angry about the bill, because they're like, okay, well, if we can use their anger to see that they can kill this bill off, then they'll be really enthused to participate in the political process, which is going to be great for a few opportunist far-right politics vultures ahead of next year's election. So I think for all those reasons, that's why you saw this hugely swelled thing. I didn't expect it would swell this much. I didn't think they had this many among their ranks at all. But, I think it's a pretty good, gauge of how many people in full have been red-pilled in Melbourne through the pandemic. And I think you pretty much saw most of them on those live streams.
I guess, well, for one thing, Tom, to your point about your failed predictions, if we were to ban people from the show because they had made a failed prediction, there would be no more show.
It'd just be me.
Yeah, no, you never said nothing wrong. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Thank you, Tom. Continue, Ben.
Well, I was wondering, what did you make of people like Adam Somyurek emerging as heroes? In fact, a hero sent from God himself, I heard on the weekend. What's your take on that?
Oh, it's just nauseating, isn't it? I mean, it's another thing. I mean, it's just this kind of like, hokey populism really involves that you have absolutely no memory of the history of any kind of politics at all. Because if you can't even remember the requisite few months back to when Adem Somyurek was exposed as like this, this shadowy, hollow man standing in the back rooms of Victorian state politics. If you have no memory of that even, and that you've just managed to reinvent him in your mind from what amounts to no more than a few tweets from him, then you're really gullible. But we all know that this movement's really gullible, and all they want is someone to tell them what they want to hear. I mean, they're so primed to just be told whatever they want to hear by whoever's ready to chuckle their morals in the bin and do it. And I mean, it doesn't seem to me that bloke had too many morals in the first place. So, he's got a score to settle with, the Dan Andrews faction of the Labor Party, and he decided to use all of these foaming at the mouth Telegram idiots to do it, and it's worked out really well for him, I suppose. So good on him. Good on him, I reckon.
My two most maybe jokerfying outcomes of all of that, in terms of jokerfying me, were that one that Adem Somyurek tweeted something along the lines of, they say there were fascists here. Well, I saw a lot of Greeks and Turks, and no Greek or Turk has ever been a fascist. Like, you opened the offices of the Grey Wolves in Melbourne. The Turkish fascist outfit.
I did. And that was an interesting learn. I'm glad he said that, because through that I got to learn that he helped to open the Grey Wolves office. As you said, I genuinely didn't know of that. I can't say I knew too much about the history of Adem Somyurek, even, beyond the things that, the last few months controversy that he was embroiled in. But, from his incredibly dumb tweet, I got to learn about that, which is interesting. But then again, I'm not the audience you want learning about that, I suppose. You want the people that are entertained by him learning that. But they seem absolutely immune at this stage to being told that anyone is a fascist.
They've been vaccinated.
They've been vaccinated against the impact of being told that someone is far right. I think they hear the words. And I honestly, at this stage, think that someone in the freedom movement hears the words and they feel a little bit insecure and wounded when you say that to them. I think they think that you're calling them a fascist. And I've had many conversations with them saying, I know you don't know who the far right people are in that movement. I'm not saying you're lying to me. I'm saying they're here. We're giving you their names. We're telling you who they are. We're telling you the impact of letting them call some of the shots in your movement and do some of the most high-profile stunts in it. And we're telling you it makes it very hard for us to trust that you're going in an innocuous direction, particularly when coupled with the increasing abuse and some occasional violence against healthcare workers and the like. And you're telling us that we're lying. So I don't think that you can tell anyone in that movement anymore that anyone's a fascist. They're immunised from it.
I think they're also about to learn a lesson about the makeup of the upper house in Victoria, particularly that there are a number of single issue minor parties who are not voting with the government but can without any trouble. And so I think next week when all taxis are made mandatory, they'll find out that maybe Transport Matters Victoria was not that fussed about supporting the pandemic management bill.
Yeah, maybe the single issue party was after all a single issue party, and perhaps it paid to find out what that is, or perhaps they didn't issue their death threats and diseased condoms in the right direction. I mean, after all, that's what they attempted to do with the Animal Justice Party MP Andy Medic, isn't it? Or just issuing death threats to Samantha Ratnam, the people that looked like that they were the most involved in the process of helping to inform and issue constructive criticism on that legislation also seem to be the people who the more enthused among the anti-lockdown movement abused and threatened the most. So I don't know. Maybe they'll find out that all the diseased condoms they sent to Andy Medic didn't end up turning out to have any effect in the parliamentary process. Perhaps all the UAP people, when they were trying to use or siphon political will out of these people, should have instructed them on how to actually try and participate in the process of getting reform to legislation.
In terms of Brisbane and I guess Sydney, what's your understanding of the situation outside of Melbourne? Where have the numbers been as impressive? Do you think this says anything about, I guess, Melbourne's status as a city in which people are more prepared to take to the streets?
I always feel that people are more prepared to take the streets in Melbourne. It seems woven into the fabric of the city itself that it will get slightly more people than in other cities. Not, mind you, I have also seen, Black Lives Matter rallies in Brisbane to the effect of about 50,000 people from the footage there last year. The will exists in other places. It just seems woven into the history, as we know, but also into the fabric of Melbourne itself. Brisbane got about, I can speak well for Brisbane, it seemed to get about 3,000 people, which maybe that's a little bit of an underestimate, of 3,000 to 5,000, which is, to put it, that is pretty much what they've had all along. So I haven't necessarily advertised this as much as I perhaps should have, and I think a little bit of that is because these Brisbane rallies were never very exciting, and they always quite had as I said earlier, a protestival vibe to them, which I found a little nauseating. But they have in Brisbane pretty consistently, even when Melbourne dwindled, always got about 5,000 people to their anti-lockdown rallies. And I'm talking about for a year or so now. So they've been a bit of a sleeper hit.
That's also a year in which they have not actually been locked down.
That's right. They haven't had the aspect where they've been able to project themselves under the face of very staunch Vic-Pol opposition, rubber bullets and bearcats and tear gas canisters and the like, as the enemy of the state and the like, which has been a shot in the arm for their reputation in Melbourne anyway. They've never been able to have that. They can't really even lay claim to any, I don't think, or very bare minimal police suppression or what have you. So they've got very big numbers. They've also got a very organised and slightly worrying movement developing in the form of a group called People's Revolution, which is run by, it's nauseating. It's run by a guy called Triddy Tricky.
Bloody malice.
Yeah, it's run by a guy called Triddy Tricky, who's a Sri Lankan man who likes to lend the impression when he's speaking to Indigenous audiences that he's not Sri Lankan and he's rather Indigenous. So a little bit of mild subliminal race shifting he does in order to gain cultural capital among Indigenous and Pacifica communities, which he's actually very good at doing. And that's become a bit of a worry. I'm starting to get reports from, like Indigenous activist mates up in, remote areas of Queensland and the like who are saying, what's this People's Revolution? Why are these people in their ear? Why are they at this Indigenous event? So on and so forth. So their impact is becoming, or their outreach is becoming increasingly well organised. They seem to have this class of people at their rallies called Guardians who are like, I don't know who they are. They're basically very well organised. A little bit adjacent to like, you see down in Melbourne, there's this group called the Peacemakers run by, ex-MMA guy called Nick Patterson, and they sort of style themselves as like, rally crowd control. And, they play a little bit of a marshal, but also a little bit of a we'll fight the cops or we'll fight enemies kind of vibe to them. Well, they're a bit like that, but way more well organised. And so there's some concerning things going on in terms of the cohesion and the organisation up in Brisbane. There's a lot of numbers, basically. And I can't speak to Sydney so well right now, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of numbers there. I'm pretty sure there's just huge numbers all around the nation. But without a firm cause at home, like you see in Melbourne, the cause of the scene doesn't necessarily swell to its maximum size of red pill people, I think. But we have to hope that we don't see any more tangible concerns for them, because obviously we've got the vaccine mandates coming, and that's going to be pushing people out more and more as well, isn't it?
Tom, you've produced videos and various other forms of content as an online content provider. Engaging with these ideas and to some extent, I guess, attempting to reach out to audiences that may find kinds of messages that are being conveyed by these movements as appealing in an attempt to provide an alternative perspective. At the same time, having a relative to various other figures, having a relatively limited impact. I've myself been contacted by various individuals who are part of this movement who have said, look, I share some of these concerns, but I am also concerned about the extent to which an anti-lockdown movement or an anti-vaccination movement allows space for more determined far-right actors. What have you found, if anything, as being more effective means of engagement? Because in my experience, I think, as you've highlighted, sometimes it can be very difficult. If someone's convinced of a position, it's a long-term project to be able to engage with those individuals or those groups in a way that allows for a conversation in which there's some sense in which there is some common ground and there's some space for rational debate. And I know you've expressed some concerns or qualms about whether or not it's worthwhile, for example, as happened on the weekend, counter-mobilisations of some sort. So in Melbourne, we saw CARF organise a relatively small presence of perhaps 1,000 people, but certainly dwarfed by the numbers that attended the other rally. Do you think that, in future, do you think those kinds of assemblages are actually useful? And what kind of positive political function do you think that they can perform? And in terms of your own social engagement, what have you found to be most conducive to some kind of conversation that doesn't lend credence to far-right ideas and I guess undermines the appeal of a more determined far-right presence within these movements?
Well, I mean, the reason that I eventually, you're right to say that I've had my concerns about whether we counter-mobilise in physically at rallies against them. I've shared those concerns in the past, and I endorsed CARF's rally whilst not wanting to simply endorse the messaging, and that I don't agree that it's fundamentally far right. I think that that's a faction there, and I'm increasingly frustrated at their inability or unwillingness to deal with that far right element. But my main reason for endorsing the counter rally was not because I wanted to, as I keep inarticulately putting it, I didn't want a rally penis measuring contest, like in terms of size, because I knew that we wouldn't win that measuring competition. I wanted people to be ready in person just in case they started, for example, attacking vaccine clinics. I'm not just imagining that. That's happened. It's happened to a degree here, nurses abused and spat on. It's happened a lot more cohesively in, say, the US and the like. I'm worried about that. I can see them growing more shrill. There's part of me that wonders, well, where does the anti-vaccine movement go given increasing pressure from mandates and the like, particularly after they get frustrated by the 22 federal election when they hopefully go the same way as Anning did with the last federal election. I mean, they either go in one or two directions. They all go off into an enclave and they don't interact with the rest of society anymore, or they start growing increasingly violent. So I want us to be ready for that. So that is what I see as being important about beginning, even if I'm having 100th people. I don't care about how big the rally is. I'm not interested. I wanted people to be getting together because I want people to be ready just in case we need to start mobilising outside clinics and the like, and I think is part of offering up grassroots support to each other as a community. I think that's one practical thing we can start to do. And I think that's a lot more useful than, say, the idea of having a cop line with us on the other side of it yelling at them. I personally enjoy doing that through yarding, but I don't actually think that's useful with this movement. As I said when I spoke at the Brisbane rally the other weekend, I don't really see all of these people on the ground as my enemy per se. I think they're their own worst enemy, and I think they're the community's worst enemy. But I think there might be some poor nurse walking home at night's worst enemy, frankly, eventually. But I don't see them as my worst enemy, and I don't really see the need for that kind of thing, a la, like Reclaim versus CARF a few years ago. I think it's a different situation, but I do see the need for us. I do see the importance for us, prospectively, to start organising as an insurance, just in case we need to start defending something, in the realm of public health in the future. So that's my idea on that. Now, in terms of speaking to people in the movement, I do speak to anti-lockdown organisers. Yes, I'm quite happy to speak to left-leaning anti-lockdown movement members, and I do quite regularly. I used to offer them not my assistance, because I can't go into those movements because members of the National Socialist Network are welcome there. I'm not. It's basically, long story short, I can't go into those rallies. They can. So if there are left-leaning groups of people, this is what I regularly tell them, who believe that there's something of that anti-lockdown movement that can be salvaged, then they need to start doing the thing that we did, for example, last weekend with Rukshan and Avi Yemeni, which is showing some spine and kicking those people out of their rallies and showing what they stand up for by rejecting elements that they don't stand up for. And actually doing that by showing what you do not tolerate, you demonstrate to the public your actual principles. If they started doing that, I would have a lot less cause for concern about the fascist elements in my movement. I would sit there laughing at home about how Neil Erikson is just about as unwelcome in there as I am. And then I could go back to my sort of smart-ass commentary on the anti-lockdown movement and not worry about it so much. So I keep telling them that, but I worry that they're not really, they don't really care about that. I think that what they care about is getting on the telly and growing their rallies at no matter the cost. I think they don't care if there's any Nazi elements in there, and I think they'd rather just go, oh no, you're the left. The left say everyone's a racist except for them, but you're the real racist. That's what I think they're like. I don't think they care about policing the increasing fascist presence in there. But I continue to tell them it's what they should do. And I continue to do it in video. So I suppose the last part of the question, answering your question, is that, I think my videos, limited success. I've turned some people around. I get messages from people saying, I'm in the movement, but I appreciate what you say. We learn lessons from it. I don't know how well they learn them, but, I like having that conversation, because I'm sure you'll all agree the anti-lockdown movement might shit me to tears, but it ain't as bad as the movements I've looked at in the past. I don't hate them like I hate an ethno-nationalist movement. I don't hate them like I hate the National Socialist Network. So I'm quite happy to talk to you as long as you're not actually helping to platform fascists. I guess it's just that increasingly they are platforming fascists. So that's the quandary with these guys, isn't it?
Well, on that note, Tom, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for joining us. If people want to find you, you're on Twitter at Tom_Tanuki. They can look you up on YouTube, Instagram, all of those places.
Please come and hit me up there. I do videos around weekly, and usually, invariably, they tend to be about the anti-lockdown movement these days. So come and catch up on the latest with all these plonkers there.
Thanks, Tom.
Well, Andy, Global Intifada is up next. We will catch you next week.
See you then.
Bye.
He sneaks into the room, crawling like a snake. Will the stupid peep ever guess his game? Will he think with film? Got his dossier. Spray the special spray into the air. Yeah! MK Ultra, will you wash my brain? MK Ultra, tell me, wanna go insane? Wanna go insane? Wanna go insane? Wanna go insane? He wears a business suit. He looks just like a zoot. Will the stupid pig ever guess his name? Will he break the code? Or will he have it blowed? Or will he just defect to the other side? Yeah! MK Ultra, will you wash my brain? MK Ultra, tell me, wanna go insane? Will I go insane? Will I go insane? Will I go insane? I think so. Crawling like a snake. Will he ever break down from my hand? Will he break the code? Or will he have it blown? Or will he just defect to the other side? Yeah! MK Ultra, will you wash my brain? MK Ultra, tell me, wanna go insane? Will I go insane? Will I go insane? Will I go insane? Insane. 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 Insane.
On Thursday, December the 2nd, join the Rally for All Life and Habitat, led by Blinky the spectacular smoking koala. Bring your banner for this family-friendly, non-arrestable action, co-hosted by Extinction Rebellion and community groups. Business as usual logs state forests, driving extinction and climate collapse. Healthy ecosystems are vital for sustaining all life, so we demand urgent, strong forest protection now. See you 5:30pm, Thursday, 2nd of December at Melbourne Museum.
A 3CR supporter.